The mix.
Welcome to Command HQ, Agent X. There's a Moscow blackout right now. Apparently,
St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg. Correction, St. Petersburg. You're right. Is Moscow next? There's an air raid siren going off in Moscow. We just brought this up, so apologies for any issues with the accuracy, but thought it was in Moscow, but it is in St. Petersburg.
Canadian Preppers' latest video as well.
How widespread is this blackout? We don't really know. You know, obviously information is going to be fairly limited coming out of Russia right now, especially if it's controlled by the federal government in Russia. Is there anything else you know about this blackout, Agent X?
No, you can pull up a Canadian Preppers video and see what he has to say.
Okay, so we got a late night emergency alert. Breaking news on the World War III front for you tonight. A story that is developing in St. Petersburg, Russia. A sub-district in St. Petersburg is completely blacked out. 100,000 people are without power. And because there's no power to the water pumps, so the pumps can't pump water. Apparently, this is what witnesses are saying now. No power, no water for 100,000 people in St. Petersburg. Now, power outages happen, but what's more interesting is what the eyewitnesses claim happened about half an hour before this event occurred. They claim that they seen flashes in the sky and accompanied by loud explosions.
So, Agent X, you're probably unable to hear that, but you've watched this video. Canadian preppers talking about potential missiles hitting power facilities, whether those are transformers or power substations around Russia, and military bases in this case, namely the Russian submarine bases in St. Petersburg, because it's right on the Gulf of Finland, are having issues with pumping water out of the whatchamacallits that the submarines go into when they're doing maintenance and repairs. Is this a harbinger for something more? What do we got here?
Dude, I think that it's like every day inches closer to a full-scale war between NATO and Russia. I don't know if you saw it over the weekend, but Russians captured German soldiers in Ukraine. I think a whole battalion of them. So, you know, we're continuing to encroach, and I think the Biden administration definitely wants us into Ukraine, wants us in a World War III, because it'll be a distraction, right? Maybe it's will they ever suspend elections in this country? I don't know. But a full-scale nuclear war would be a good reason to do it. But the Democrats definitely need some sort of diversion or distraction right now. And what better than to look like we've inadvertently been drawn into World War III and a direct conflict with Russia.
Yeah, it's convenient timing, particularly considering that the Ukrainian funding is having greater resistance in Congress, and it might be drying up a little bit. And of course, the public support of this conflict in Ukraine and the funding for it. There was a segment on 60 Minutes tonight about how American taxpayers are paying for all services right now in Ukraine, and it was just another slap in the face of the American taxpayer. But with respect to actually continuing this conflict and elections, everything that's going on right now, it would be the perfect timing to start a broader war with Russia, not just a proxy war, but a direct conflict in order to maintain power over a democratic election, stuff like that. And it seems as if that, especially with these poll numbers coming out and all the legacy media lies around it, just last week, I think CBS was saying that Trump had a 1 point lead over Biden in a potential rematch in 2024. And then suddenly this morning, I popped up like Apple News and Google News and everything else, and it said that Trump has a 10-point plus lead over Biden. And that stuff doesn't just change in a week. And I think Biden has a 23% favorability rating right now in the polls that they're conducting. And these are mainstream polls. And they're inflated to favor Biden anyway. So if they're inflated and he's still only getting 23% support, I mean, that just tells you everything you need to know. And what you mentioned, Agent X, about inflation and how the government is hiding all this information from the public. Everybody can see when you go to the grocery store and you try and buy a watermelon, and even 4 years ago it was like, I don't know, $1.50, and now it's $8.50. It's nearly $10 for a watermelon.
Dude, everything has just spiked in price, like down to the, it's not so, like, I don't know, like it just feels like everything, there's some things that have stayed pretty stagnant, right? Some things, but like the important things like milk, cheese, bread, those things, like the staples, have spiked up in price. And it's interesting, how much more are we going to take before we sort of rise up against what is a absolutely corrupt government? All that money that's being funneled to Ukraine gets recycled through petrodollars and drives up inflation just as much as it is printing it and doling it out to the billionaires. I was reading a post today. It's interesting. They spent something like, printed like $9 trillion during the pandemic, which is 40% of our GDP. And what did we get out of that? Two $1,200 or was it $1,400 checks? That was it. Meanwhile, as Russell Brand pointed out, there are 40 new billionaires in big pharma. The property prices have gone through the roof. It's nearly impossible to own a home. BlackRock went around and bought single-family homes right out from under, the hardworking middle class. So it's going to be, it's interesting. I think a lot of people are waking up to how corrupt the government is, and I wonder if they try to tip us into some sort of armed conflict with Russia, if what the backlash is going to be. So
that's the only way the government has out of it. And we're borrowing all this money from China to pay for these foreign wars, and now we're coming into conflict with China over Taiwan anyway. So it's just everything is bound to fail, and they're intentionally doing this because they want to make it impossible for the American dollar to survive. And eventually, at some point, the dollar is going to be worthless and no one can use it, and then everything else will crumble. No one knows exactly when that's going to happen. But if you look at all the graphs and the amount of debt and government paper, it's just astronomical within the last 3 to 4 years. No one has ever seen anything quite like it. And
$9
we're in this
trillion, man.
$9 trillion, plus I think it was like $3 trillion in the last 6 to 12 months. I don't have the exact numbers, but just in, paying for Ukraine and paying for this whole conflict. And what you're seeing now is that Poland has pulled back their support of Zelensky. Not to get into the technicals of the grain exchange and the trade deal there, but there were some insults that the Polish president was kind of enraged by that Zelensky made before Congress this last week. And we have a lot of trouble right now, and they're trying to spark this direct conflict with Russia specifically. And I think what this Moscow or St. Petersburg attack may have been was retaliation for anything that happened in Ukraine, or what if this was retaliation for hacking the F-35? If you're thinking about quid pro quo and how these conflicts usually sort of escalate, that's exactly the course of action it would take. Because if you're thinking about it, all of the infrastructure failures in Russia and here with all these food factories and train derailments and stuff, these are all related to potential cyber attacks. And these programmable logic controllers that are very vulnerable, particularly in Ukraine and Russia, where you probably have military or state actors in the US or in the West that have gained access to those facilities. But now it's almost even worse, because it's not like soft military power. This is direct, kinetic. And this is not a good sign, for sure. I wonder what, if you watch this video with Canadian Prepper Agent X, what else did the Canadian Prepper say?
I don't know. I didn't watch the full video because he kind of catastrophizes and drones on.
He does. He goes way, way, way above.
But no. Dude, I'm feeling terrible.
All right, we just want to do a quick stream tonight. 10-15 minutes. We've already done about 13 minutes.
Hold on, I sent you a link real quick in the chat.
Pull it up. Yeah, so this is a poll I saw this morning that was propagated out through all the major news sources in the world. This looks like a Guardian article. And, obviously the UK always has a slightly different spin from American mainstream or legacy media. So if the Guardian is printing this, that there's probably more veracity to the assertions in the article.
I think Wisconsin shut down mail-in voting. It'll be interesting to see how. I really think so. Like I know I've got COVID right now. And I think that they've released another strain out because it seems like a lot of people are getting it.
It does, yeah. And
I
hope
think
you feel better, by the way.
I think that they're going to try another lockdown. We're going to have COVID 2023. And they're going to make a push for these mail-in ballots. But I also think they're going to try to push on the hot conflict with Russia as well. Anything to keep Trump out of office. Because I really think if Trump gets elected, he's going to clear house. He's going to absolutely clear house in the executive branch. You're not going to have any more left-wing bureaucrats basically calling the shots.
Don't you think that Trump at this point needs something like RFK Jr. as his vice president in order to offset some of this, administrative state tyranny against him?
No, I think I don't know. I mean, I don't know who would be a good vice president for him. I mean, he's
Kari Lake is probably right in that zone.
well, the problem is if you pick anybody from the political sphere, right, they're always going to stab you in the back, like Mike Pence has done and is doing.
Good point. Good point.
Even these political outsiders, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and the guy from Kentucky, even they would they're too polarizing, right? But I don't know.
What about just someone who's regular, who's not a politician, someone who has no bones to pick, someone who, could be, not an Ivy Leaguer, someone who's average in many respects, but above average in their sort of like, their ethics and their morality and stuff like that?
I would pick your boy Martin Scarelli.
It's an interesting choice. We should
Put him in
probably
charge.
put him in charge of pharma.
Of research and development. Put him in like as vice president. Make him oversee, basically the CDC.
That's actually not a bad idea, considering the fact that someone like Martin Shkreli, who went to prison, by the way, for what, like 5 or 7 years?
Yeah.
He knows a lot about the judicial system. He knows a lot about the FDA, pharmaceutical research, of course, because he ran Turing Pharmaceutical for so long. And, he comes off, and I've watched a lot of his content, like he's kind of got Asperger's, so he's got that kind of surgical laser focus that you need. And he's also got this sort of like, he's mad, he's angry, obviously. He's a little naive though, and he's still very young. I think he's younger than me. So, but yeah, I mean, someone like that who can clean house, who's got a bone to pick, would be an interesting angle. And how often do you hear about the vice president? Kamala Harris is kind of an anomaly, but when Barack Obama was in office, how often did you hear about Joe Biden? You very rarely heard about Joe Biden. Obviously, he had nothing to do because he was getting involved in all these corrupt foreign dealings while he was vice president, other than going around and giving speeches.
The vice presidency is the most useful. Well,
it is. I mean, it's just a backup.
Well, it's a backup, right? But, Obama and Bush both kind of employed their vice presidents to go out and do the dirty work for them, and kind of keep their hands clean. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So even with Cheney was the one who was kind of, although they kind of claim he was the architect of a lot of stuff, I think he was the one who kind of went out and
contractor stuff in Iraq. Yep.
So,
well, I think so. The U.S. has sanctions on Venezuela right now, and they just issued that executive order to give 600,000 Venezuelans the right to work in this country, and they're sending Kamala Harris. I think they're trying to, at least, to these Latin American countries to try and do that dirty work down there, but they're trying to drum up this sort of invasion of the United States through migration while blaming Trump and Marco Rubio for supporting these sanctions against Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela over the 2018 presidential election in Venezuela, and the successive sanctions that the U.S. actually placed on Venezuela, claiming there was election fraud and that there was a lot of other sham activities going on there. So now you can see, and I think AOC is coming out saying this, that they're trying to blame Trump for this migration because he's imposed these sanctions on countries like Venezuela. And again, they're trying to tie it to this like idea that Trump was always thinking about election fraud because that's the reason that they've done this, and that the average Venezuelan is now incredibly economically impoverished. So there's, you know, in terms of with respect to your comment about the dirty work, it's obviously what they're doing with Kamala Harris. They're sending her down there to try and do that. But I know you're not feeling well, so we should probably close this down. Anything else you want to say before we do?
No, man. They're hitting Cuomo pretty hard again.
Are they?
Oh yeah, they got another. I don't know. I've seen
What are
a
they
couple
saying? Andrew or Chris?
Andrew. They said that he threatened another dude's wife.
Haha.
Basically said there was stuff that if she accused him of sex, would be very embarrassed to see.
You cut out for a little bit
what do
there,
you think
but
about?
so they're accusing Andrew Cuomo of, quote, threatening another man and his wife.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically said, "Oh, I've got stuff on your wife, and you know, if she accuses me of sexual harassment, I'll release this stuff, and it's stuff your children don't want to see."
Mm-hmm.
And they hit that Melissa DeRosa today, like making fun of her, saying that she was a liar, and she was begging for people to plug her book, but nobody cared.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of your girl Tay Tay going out with Travis Kelce?
Oh, she was at the Chiefs game today, I saw. Well,
Yeah,
look,
she left the stadium with him.
I think it's that's funny you mentioned this because I was thinking that you were gonna be thinking about it, and so I spent like 2 minutes analyzing, and I think Taylor Swift, T-Swift, is just using Travis Kelce to kind of further her,
Isn't that what
engagement
she
with the
always
public.
does?
Well, she's kind of dated guys that no one really knows, but Travis Kelce is fairly well known, particularly among men, because he's
No,
a,
no, no, no. Her the last boyfriend, nobody knew who he was. But before that, you got to remember, she was like going out with Jake Gyllenhaal and the dude from
that might have been a legitimate
the
romantic
werewolf
endeavor.
movies.
Oh yeah,
Dude. Yeah,
but I
dude,
don't, Travis Kelce is not a match for T Swift. You can just tell. I mean, T Swift is very intelligent. Travis Kelce is not, and physically they just seem like they're misshapen. So obviously Taylor Swift is just and she showed up in like full Chiefs gear. She's not from Missouri. She's not from that area at all. She's
She was
from
in his
Pennsylvania.
box.
She's from Pennsylvania. If anything, she'd be a Steelers fan.
Dude. Well, she could be an Eagles fan. Dude,
She could be an Eagles fan.
I mean, we found the one person who has a higher body count than MAGA Queen, right? And Zelensky.
T Swift.
You know, dude, I don't know. Like, people are nuts.
Well, I think I told you this, but I watched the first NFL game that I've watched in 3 or 4 years, and I saw Travis Kelce in a bunch of Pfizer commercials, and I was like, I'm never watching the NFL again. And by the way, like, I used to be kind of a avid, watch I'm a huge Vikings fan, so I watch the Vikings a lot, and I just haven't because of all the nonsense that's happened. And when there's talk about Pfizer making billions of dollars off the pandemic, and then they're supporting Travis Kelce, who in turn is basically now turning around and using this to gain celebrity status, dating T Swift, and T Swift is wearing these. It's just gross.
She's in his box, bro. She's in his box.
It's disgusting.
It's terrible. I don't know what to say about it.
All right. Well,
other than
you have some
your boy Coach Pride got
PJ Fleck.
Yesterday.
No, Deion Sanders.
Yeah, Coach Pride.
Yeah, he got his salad tossed by a green wearing uniform Oregon team that just took him out.
Dude,
took him out.
You
where
look
was
like
Travis
a dude,
Hunter, man?
You look like a dude who would fit in at the University of Oregon.
Probably.
Dude. Yep.
What do they call yuppies?
Unpack the quack.
Lumberjack.
Dude. Yeah, can't go to bed. Oh, Jesus.
Dude, when is Travis Hunter gonna come back? You think Deion's gonna take this team to a premier bowl game?
He's gonna take them to the toilet bowl, bro.
All right. You need to take some supplements and vitamins. And since we're streaming to YouTube, we probably can't talk about other FDA approved medications.
Did you see that the Mayo Clinic has listed hydroxychloroquine as a treatment for COVID?
Oh, they have?
Yeah. Yep.
Isn't that hilarious considering the last 3 years, CNN, every single news source spent hours and hours, days and weeks of coverage dismissing.
Well, you know what the purpose was, right? The purpose was to drag the pandemic out as long as they could. They got 2 years out of it. Almost 3.
Well, a lot of people kind of supported it because it ushered in this new way of work, this remote work. And I did remote work before the pandemic, and I honestly didn't really like it. I'm kind of, I like talking to people. I like being in an office, but like the pandemic where everybody is remote, I've kind of enjoyed it. But I think the corporate workers in America and Europe, it's going to be hard. And that's part of the reason why there was kind of this widespread, sticky support of everything that happened, is because everybody got this sort of peace of mind, and stress from work decreased significantly, I think, at scale for so many people. And I think that's also what dragged the pandemic out further, is just kind of this new way. And obviously that was what they were pushing. I mean, that was the scheme. But I think people really enjoyed it. And I wouldn't even say it's over. I mean, it's kind of like just decreased in intensity up until the point that we're at right now. So
yeah. All right, dude. Let's go. Let's sign off.
Okay. Have a good week, everyone. Please like and subscribe and follow the Twitter account. Bye.
Thanks for watching Command HQ with Brock and Agent X. We'll see you next time.